Hello and welcome to AMA Puget Sound's Coffee Talk series, live on alternate Thursdays at 11 a.m. It is 11 a.m. Our guest today is Morgan Roth. Hi, Morgan.
Hi.
Hi. Morgan is a marketer of the trades, roofing and plumbing specifically, and she's the host of the podcast, The Women Can Project.
Yep.
And you also work in an industry that employs men.
Yes, men primarily.
Absolutely. So before we get started, hi, Morgan. How are you?
Hi. I am well, Julie. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. It's almost the weekend, so
close.
I'm very happy. Yes, exactly. So tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so my name is Morgan. I was gonna say my age. I'm not gonna say my age. I work in marketing.
I just turned 41 2 weeks ago. You're fine.
Okay. I recently celebrated my 23rd again. No, like several.
I know.
I've celebrated many times.
You can still. I can't pass for that anymore.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So I work in marketing. I work in primarily the trades. I've worked in roofing and plumbing, and it's just been an interesting experience learning how to market to those two groups. I've marketed directly to customers, and now I'm marketing directly to businesses. So it's really different audiences, and learning about their particularities is interesting. I have a podcast called The Women Can Project, and it's dedicated to women who work in the trades. And it's about sharing the stories of women who had to kind of struggle and fight to get where they are. And the idea behind it is if we can share their stories, we can help the next generation of women kind of sidestep some of those hurdles to be successful. Exactly. And so that's what it's all about. And I'm always looking for podcast guests. So that's a plug. If anybody wants
And we have the link below in the description. It's so cool that you are doing this and doing this podcast for specifically women who are in the trades industry. I was sharing before we went live. I worked for a restoration company in Green Bay, Recoveron. They're a great company, and they work primarily with insurance agents and customers who have been affected by fire, water, or mold in their home. Wisconsin being an area that gets winter, it floods. You better check your sub pump. And definitely. So, and then fire obviously is always, especially now, is a huge issue. So, it was, as I was saying to you, it was an office of mainly men in the construction side and the industrial side. And then the women were mainly in the administrative side. There was a woman who was Molly. She ran the department for cleaning all of items that have been touched by fire. But again, that was in the industry that's considered more of a woman's job. And I thought that was really fascinating because it was only women who were on that team. And so what are some stories that you found? This is not the primary part of what we're going to be talking about in this episode, just so everybody does know. But I just find it really fascinating. And I think that we do need to be sharing this information.
Yeah. Well, I've been really fortunate that my guests have been pretty diverse in regards to their roles. I interviewed an erosion control specialist. She led a team of men, which is really unheard of. And she got her start through a program called ANEW, ANEW, and it's a program here in Washington State that offers pre-apprenticeship training. And so she used that program to get her certifications, and she became a leader in that field. And it was fascinating how she just kind of she took control of her life. She was working, I believe, in a traditionally female role and wasn't making the salary that she wanted to support her family and her lifestyle. So she found ANEW, stuck with it, got her certifications, got her apprenticeship training, and she's now a foreman. And she's earned the respect of not just the men around her, but the women as well, which I think is really, really cool. And she makes great money. She's in a field that she really enjoys, and her family is supported. So it's stories like that that are really special to me. I have expanded my the Women Can Project to interview women in all areas of business. So it doesn't just have to be the trades, but the trades are predominantly what I'm looking for.
Sure. And again, the link below if you're interested, and you should check it out.
Thank
So
you.
absolutely. Let's get into really what we were going to be talking about today, which is marketing to those clients that are just not on social media, which in my brain kind of blows my brain because it's 2021. I social media started when I was just ending college. So it's been 15, almost 20 years of social media. So it's really fascinating. And what are you finding with these clients? Why aren't they on social yet? Is it just an apprehension, or they don't have somebody to do it?
Well, previously I was working B2C, and now I'm working B2B. Mm-hmm. And I will say that my experience working B2B, my audience is much older. So the methods that I would have used to reach them are not as effective. So targeted ads, geo-targeting, Instagram, Facebook worked really well with my younger audience, a younger demographic. But for the business owners that I'm working with now, they're not on social media. They don't really care. They're not interested in social media. They think Instagram and Facebook is stupid or stupid. And they're not really interested in jumping on that bandwagon. I get it, because I mean, truly, I don't like how I am kind of a slave to social media. I don't like feeling like I'm kind of controlled to it. That being said, I think it's a very useful tool. So I understand I'm still going to use social media, but I have kind of had to figure out, okay, take a step back. Where is my audience? And that's kind of been a hurdle that I've been experiencing. And so what I found is they're not on social media. They're not really online. They're still on the traditional forms of media that I feel like as the marketing sphere has kind of tried to run away from. So I'm trying to get back to it.
Right. What are the traditional marketing pieces or things that they're doing that they are still holding on to? I mean, word of mouth referrals, those will never go away. That is always going to be like your peak bread and butter.
Yeah. Well, so I think like referrals and a really strong brand go hand in hand, because without a strong brand, you're not going to have any referrals.
Right.
So I think that's a key player in keeping that older audience engaged. I think radio is still a great way to reach the older demographic. The older generation is still on radio. They're still listening. TV, I think, is a great way to reach your audience. I would say radio is better, just in my professional experience. This is going to sound crazy, but like the yellow pages, not maybe necessarily the actual yellow pages, but directories similar to that, I think, are still great ways to reach that audience. So essentially what we're talking about is the baby boomers, the 65 and older. Yeah. So I think that's a great way. And then just magazines and newspapers. I know that newspapers are kind of dying out, but they still have a place.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think my mom, hi Mom, I think she still gets the Sunday paper because of the ads. Yep. You know, it's one of those things. It's really fascinating with that older generation of, well, this is how we've always done it. And they're not wrong. That is how it was always done. But if they're going to keep being there, then, and like I've always said, you have to meet your audience. Like, and you've said this as well, you have to meet your audience where they are, rather than trying to get them, it's especially with a certain generation and leading them to social media. It's like trying to lead a horse. It's like trying to bathe a kitten. It's just not going to happen.
It's really true. It's really true. And I don't want to say that there is no place for social media with that audience. I think it's still really relevant to to try and target them as best you can, because I know lots of older people that are on Facebook and that send me recipes or send me memes.
Yep.
But it's not the only place they're at, and it's not the
Mm-hmm.
only place they're going to be at that they're on consistently. I think it's more inconsistent.
Mm-hmm. Whereas, the radio, certain people, they have their routine. They
Mm-hmm.
read the morning paper, they watch their news. They do this because this is just routine. So, like you said, checking Facebook may not be part of that unless they're watching TV on their tablet or something like that.
Yeah.
That's really
I,
fascinating.
I think just from my previous experience, I know that there are diehard Como fans and diehard Cairo fans, and
Hmm.
that's part of their identity. So they're going to actively listen.
Yep, absolutely.
I was thinking the other day, like, is radio really, when I was preparing for this, I was just thinking, like, is radio really that impactful? Because, usually when I'm listening to the radio, I'm not engaged usually. I could like kind of sing along to a song that's playing, or maybe I'm listening to like every other word. But
Right.
um, if I listen to the radio in the morning, I know later on that afternoon I'm gonna start saying the Shane Co script. I don't know if you've heard that. Now
Mhm.
you have a friend in the diamond business, Shane Co, and that's all my friends. So I grew up here in Washington. All my friends, we all know about Shane Co Company.
Sure, sure.
Open weekdays till 8, Saturdays and Sundays till 5. We all know it, and that just kind
Mhm.
of like pops up in your brain. You're not even aware. So I think that
Yeah.
speaks to the impact that radio
Mhm.
has on an audience.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's really funny that we're talking about this. My internship, unpaid, by the way.
That's a plug right there.
Pay your interns, please. My internship was actually with a radio station back in Green Bay. And so I was primarily assigned to one of the stations, which was like, okay, so this was like 15 years ago. So it was to like the middle aged moms. And so it was funny because each station had their own company vehicle. And so for that station in particular, it was a minivan. For the sports station, it was a big Hummer. Granted, this is like 2005 or 2007, bear that in mind. And it was just really, really fascinating. Like the country station was a pickup truck. So they were really, really going into those personas. And part of my job was to actually go to this one grocery store, it doesn't even exist anymore, and sit outside with the company vehicle playing the radio station and handing out pretzels to customers walking out of the grocery store. I learned nothing from that internship, but that was my whole job. And I don't know what the point was. It was just, okay, go
You
do
were
that.
there. You gotta
Yeah.
be where your audience is. Your audience was clearly at the
Mhm.
grocery store, and you were there.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
great.
Yeah, but it was funny because it was just myself and another intern. It wasn't like it's not like they were broadcasting live. They were just, all right, take the car and sit right in front with the radio on. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, we got permission, obviously, from the grocery store.
yeah.
But
That's
yeah, it worked. Like you said, it did work. There were a few other instances where working for the country music station where I went to a country music festival, took the company truck, and you just go in with that brand and you know your audience.
mm-hmm.
And that radio station in particular, even though they didn't pay me, knew their audiences, which was really
Yeah.
fascinating. So they probably still do that today because it worked. It worked then, it still works. So some of those things like, oh, this is how we've always done it. Sometimes it just works.
I mean, yeah, totally. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Like,
I think it was pretzels. You handed out pretzels out of the truck. I think that's so cool. I think people still love little things. My grandmother would call it a gashank, a little gift. People love personalized things. If it's your branded a hat with your logo on it or a keychain. I've done chocolates where we give out chocolates with our logo molded on there, and people love little things. I think I'm not so sure how relevant this is to the millennial and Gen Z generation, because I think that generation, my generation, is very immediate, fast-paced, fast food, want it now.
Mhm.
So I don't know how if this would hold with my generation, but I think that the older generations appreciate the personalization and the personal touch, and
Mhm.
they're looking for they're looking for a relationship
Yeah.
with the business that they're buying from.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and it sounds weird when you say, well, they don't want to be on social media, because I think that my generation thinks, oh, we're providing a personalized experience through social media,
Yeah.
but they're not on there to receive it. So you have to have that personal experience in a
Mhm.
different way.
Yeah. And it's fascinating you bring that up with like the tchotchkes and things because I guess I'm like of two generations. I'm a hybrid. I'm like half Gen X, half millennial. So I can understand the older ways and I can still understand like the new stuff coming in, which is great. So I remember a time when if you signed up for, they would have like banks would have promotions of like, come in, open your checking account, you get a toaster. That was the big thing throughout the 80s. You get a toaster. I don't know why.
I
Um,
think we should bring that back. I don't have a toaster and I need one.
yeah, that could actually, especially for younger people, hey, start saving your money.
Yeah.
I did actually work for, I worked everywhere, just so you know. I worked for a bank, and I think I've told the story where we were, our bank was the official bank of the Green Bay Packers. So I would have to go to Packer games with other bankers and try to get people to sign up for checking accounts while they're drinking at a game, spending a whole bunch of money going
You were
and trying to,
either very
yeah,
successful or not successful at all.
depends on who you were because I wasn't very successful because I'm not a salesperson. But the little trinket was a jersey from the store, and it's like a professional jersey, but you had to go through this checklist of things. You had to open an account, put a certain amount in, have direct deposit set up, do your online banking, and have all of this checked off before you could get that jersey. And it was interesting. I don't know what it was like in the 80s with getting the toaster, but I'm sure it was very similar. At least you have to open the account and have a certain amount in there. I think some banks still do that kind of thing, but it's not like it used to. Um,
No.
it's just not like it used to be.
Yeah, I think the incentive, I mean, the ads I'm served through my bank daily is open up a new account and get $100
Mm-hmm.
automatically added to your account. So
Yep.
it's not as tangible. I mean, it's still money.
Right.
It's not as tangible as receiving a toaster.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you really want to get the millennial and the next generation, the Gen Zs, how about open up a bank account with us and we'll teach you how to change your tire. That I
Yeah.
think would be, or like we'll
Mm-hmm.
show you how to balance your checkbook.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
skills that we're losing that we don't have. That's
Mm-hmm.
where I think we really need to
Yep.
hit them. So I'm just going to plugging that note away for
Exactly.
later when I go to
Mm-hmm.
the bank and present that idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Thanks.
Yeah. And some banks do offer like, skill training, like here's how you balance your checkbook, but it's not to the point where we need it to be for everybody. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because, I remember the days of, okay, you had your checkbook and you had to balance your checkbook every single day or every month. You got your checks back to you. That
Yeah.
was weird.
I've
Now it's like,
never even experienced, I don't even know what that is. You get your checks back?
yeah, back in the day, you'd write out checks, like you went to the grocery store before debit cards were really, really a thing. Yeah, you'd write a check and then it would go through the whole process of being cashed and all of that. And then you'd get your check sent back to you so you could reconcile your bank account. Mm-hmm.
That's wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that happened that like we just don't do anymore because it's not relevant. So now we have online banking. You can quick check your account. Okay, I just spent $5. Okay, I saw it show up in my bank account immediately. I don't have to wait till the end of the month.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wild.
So I think that's one thing that maybe explaining to the older generation of how quickly you can get information on social media compared to waiting until your bank statement comes. I don't know why we're focused on banks, but we're focused on banks.
I don't know. We can move on from that. Yeah.
But that's because that's an institution I think we can all understand. But it's fascinating how we have to still look back at the older generations and where are they? And especially for a generation like you, or in someone who's in a generation like you, if you are not aware of those spots, you're not going to find those people. And
Yeah.
part of it is that knowledge sharing of, well, this is how we used to do things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The older generation, I think, like a common misconception for pushing social media and the kind of the new school marketing tactics is perhaps they think that the demographic that they're trying to reach, the older demographic that they're trying to reach, is not that vast, but it's actually the complete opposite. And the population size of I don't know where it is off the top of my head. The population size of the baby boomer generation is huge.
It's huge. That's why they were called boomers.
Yeah. I believe the millennial. Yeah.
What's that?
The millennial generation is supposed to be like the next largest. Either we surpass or very, very similar.
Surpassed. Okay. I think just barely.
Okay. Well, what's important to note is that baby boomer generation, huge. And they're not the last baby boomer generation. The last baby boomers are going to reach 65 in 2030. So we've got a lot of time to market, to continue to use these old school marketing tactics to them. Because I think, like 15 years, so like 2050, theoretically. But what's important to note is that they're a very wealthy generation.
Yes. I just read an article. I've read many articles on how, yes, that generation is extremely wealthy, and most likely they're going to pass that on to their children and their grandchildren, which will be the part, the younger Gen X and younger. So that's going to be really fascinating to see what that's going to look like. Yeah. It just, the whole population thing is really just fascinating. And now we're seeing a lower birth rate even before now it's lower even after the pandemic. Yeah. It was already dropping. So that's going to be really, really fascinating over the next, say, 30 years of what is that workforce going to look like as those boomers start to retire. So, and at the same time, how many of those jobs are becoming obsolete?
That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother topic. My brain can't go there.
So let's talk about, the goals of converting your audience. We haven't talked about goals, but I think we really need to. We've gotten about 20 minutes in. So let's talk about those goals. What do you recommend?
Well, I think that, if we're saying, do we stick to traditional, for the older generation and focus on new school for the younger generation? I think that we do both for both. I think that, you have to meet your audience where they're at, and you want to be marketing to them in a way that they can receive it, and that there is some transaction happening where that business is taking place, and you want to see that directly in your sales pipeline. I say use both frames of marketing for both generations, because I think that the younger generation, the millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, I think that they can appreciate the old school way of marketing. I think even if you target them and you find the most success through social media channels and campaigns, that radio, TV, ads are still very relevant. Because I think there are a lot of younger people who are also resistant to social media.
Absolutely. Especially, more and more of what we're learning now about privacy and all that kinds of things. I think more people are shying away from social media because, ooh, gross. You're doing what? What's that?
They don't want their business. They don't want their business out on social media.
Right. And then there's also the group of folks that are like, hey, let's try going back to that old school way of doing things because, it seems kind of cool. Let's try it. And trying to shy away from social, and what are some really fascinating things we can be doing traditionally. So it's just also not just looking at the traditional old school media, but like what else can we be doing that's really fun?
Well, I think kind of touching back to personalization. I think personalization is a great way to reach the older generations. And I think that, I mean, taking into account the fact that we're very conscious of safety and health these days, I think that everybody's kind of had to limit their face-to-face interaction. But as best you can, keeping safety front of mind, I think that um, face-to-face interaction is great, and it's a way that you can make a lasting impression on your audience. So I think that sponsored lunches are great. I think that all business owners really appreciate it when people bring in lunch. I mean, salesmen have been using the, hey, can I bring you lunch? They've been using that for, I don't know, they could have been doing that, during, Cleopatra's time. I don't know. I'm sure that had an element to play in there, but that's a very effective way to get yourself in front of the customer, to make a positive impression because everybody gets hungry, and to share about what you're trying to sell. So yeah, I think to make it as personal as possible and to make a lasting impression is the best way to do it. And I think people, honestly, I just think you have to be creative with your audience, because your audience, my audience might be different from your audience. So I think you have to know who your audience is and kind of come up with the right formula for how you reach them.
And most business owners, they know their customers. They know what their customers like. They know what they won't like. Anybody who's ever worked in retail like myself, if you see a campaign coming down the pike and within 2 seconds what customers or how customers will react, you just know, because you know your customers. So that's a huge part. And if you say you don't know your customers, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Who's buying your stuff, So yeah, look at who's buying your stuff. Start there. I do want to ask you this, because I think this is really interesting, but we've talked about, classic tools and things like that. And we've talked about radio and billboards. So what is your opinion? What do you think about tools like radio jingles and billboards in the future? Do you think those are going to become obsolete, or are they going to come back?
I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I've also done a lot of research. And honestly, I see a lot of different speculations. I don't have a magic ball, 8 ball. I can't look into the future. So my opinion is that once baby boomers kind of move out, move beyond the buying sector, I don't think that radio is going to be as relevant. I could be 100% wrong. I think that it might be that instead of radio, we really see more podcasts. And then, I mean, podcasting and radio, very similar, very, very similar.
Right.
And podcasts are huge right now, huge. So,
and we have streaming.
Yes. It could be that radio just kind of morphs with podcasting and it becomes one, and it stays super strong. But I'm not sure how effective traditional radio is going to be in the next 50 years. I'm not really sure. Other traditional forms, newspaper, I really don't know. I think that's really taken a hit with the younger generation. I don't think they're as engaged in newspaper. And I think that with COVID, we really saw a decline in physical newspapers. I do think this is just me. This is my personal opinion. I think that billboards are going to be around for a really, really long time. I mean, if you watch Back to the Future, there are billboards there still. So I think that that's proof.
My opinion with billboards, and we're coming up on time, but I'm okay if we go over. With billboards, I'm in certain areas of the country, I am seeing a ban on billboards
Mm.
just because it hides the landscape or it's too distracting for drivers. So I think we might, in certain areas, see an increase of a ban of billboards.
Interesting.
I love this story. In Wisconsin, there's from, I think it's Oshkosh to like Appleton or something on a side highway. There's a string of billboards for like 5 miles, and they alternate. One of them is a religious one, and the next one is for an adult store. And then they alternate for like 5 miles. It's these two alternating. It's like, this is where you're spending all of your money. Okay. So I find that fascinating. So billboards, I'm with you. I don't
But
know.
You remembered it.
Everybody knows. Everybody in Wisconsin, you know where I'm talking. You know what store I'm talking to. I think we're going to see possibly an increase in a ban on billboards. I don't think it's going to be that huge. I think it's going to be just smaller communities banning them, especially in rural areas. Radio, I agree. I think it's going to morph or evolve into something else. I think the traditional model of radio, where it's just easily accessible to everybody, I think will probably eventually go away. And I don't condone that. But I can see we do, like you said, we have the podcasts, we have Sirius XM, we have streaming, it's more of why are people listening to radio? And people listen to radio for a long time because that's how you accessed music and new music. And then you'd go buy that record. I remember that. And now you can just buy everything online. You can see a video already. You'd also, in the 80s and 90s, you'd have to wait for the music video on MTV. And then it would play incessantly. Yeah. And so I think because none of that is going to change, it's just going to evolve into the next iteration.
Yeah, the next thing. Mm-hmm. I would agree. Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think that we can't really know, because I would never have foreseen that podcasts would be as popular as they are, because I would have thought, well, that's just somebody's having their own radio station in their garage.
Right.
Taken off.
But at the same time, with a podcast, there's usually a theme or a topic around it. Whereas when you're just listening to a radio station, they're just, hey, here's the new song from this person, or here's some trivia. Unless you're listening to Casey Kasem, look them up in the top 40, and you could send love notes to people. Anyway, because you can have everything so accessible now. And, why did you listen to a radio station? Well, if it was for the music, well, get Spotify.
Yeah.
If you're listening to the person, you'll listen to the podcast or Sirius XM.
Yeah, I think the engagement's going to be much more purposeful.
Yes. Absolutely. So we kind of went over a little bit. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like the audience to know?
Something that I think is just helpful for me in regards to knowing my audience is conducting research at the end or the beginning of every year, really looking back on your data and figuring out who your customer is and where they are, and then using whatever opportunity you can to get in front of them and get in front of their face, and ask them, how do you receive information? Do you like getting an email blast, or would you rather a salesman tell you about this? How do you want to receive information from us? And I think that that's a great way to, number one, get straightforward information, but also really show them that you care about them and that you want to meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. And I think that is invaluable FaceTime that you just can't get through a targeted ad.
Right, exactly. Because you're missing out on that human interest aspect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Human interest will always, I've always said it will always dominate everything.
Always trump. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Awesome. This was so fun.
Thank you.
This was so fun.
Hang out. It's been fun.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate your time. And we did have to schedule or reschedule. That's okay. We're all good. I'm so happy I got to talk to you. If you liked today's episode, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the notification bell to make sure you're getting the newest content. We have all of Morgan's links in the description below, including her podcast that we talked about earlier. We will be back in 2 weeks with Evan Kirstel. So until then, have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.